Hello, welcome to another episode of Barrel Banter, the show where we gather around after a long day's work, have a sip or two of whiskey, bourbon, and just kind of discuss what's on our mind, what's going on in the agency. My name's Chris.
I'm John.
Craig.
And Caleb.
And we are drinking a bottle of JR Revelry today. Craig, you want to crack that guy open?
I sure do.
So, John, what do you know about this this company?
Well, this one's interesting because it's actually run by a guy named Jesus Ricardo Tapia. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry if I didn't. But I'm guessing that's where the JR comes from.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, his company is La Bodega International Spirits, and they actually make this in Indiana and bottle it in Nashville. And,
really?
Yeah, and the really interesting tidbit here is that it's all American. Every little thing about it, down to the labels and the bottle, the cork, everything is American.
Interesting.
He didn't want any single element of this not to be.
I like that.
Like a true bourbon then, right?
We got a suggestion from our last show that rather than adding a full ice cube, just a couple drops of water will do you to help open it up a little bit.
Filtered water.
Filtered water. That's the key. None of this sewer swill.
LA water.
LA. Oh god. Start growing lesions.
Third eye.
All right.
So like the Simpsons fish.
So I do know, because I did a little research myself, and their logo here, the bowler hat, bowler hat, right? Bowler hat,
Mm-hmm.
is a throwback to his Peruvian heritage. He says that it's a common accessory worn by people of Peru.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I found that pretty interesting. So as we dive in and take our first sip here, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
I cheated. I already had some.
Me too.
This guy.
First of all, what do you guys smell there?
You know, I've had this with ice before, and there's definitely a little more nose to it without, putting ice on it.
I don't know. Very, very sweet smelling. Got a little peppery.
Maybe a little vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
I'm catching a little alcohol too
It's a little.
in the nose.
About 45% maybe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
But
can.
just a hair hot
Yeah.
Yeah,
with just that little bit of water in there. That's
you can definitely taste the taste of vanilla.
You know what? For being a 90 proof, I would say it's smoother than the Larceny.
Yeah,
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
the Larceny had a lot of heat to it.
Yes.
Probably some of the most heat that I've experienced from a bourbon before.
Yeah. This one still definitely has some warmth.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think I enjoy it a little bit more with the water rather than the ice cube. It doesn't just diffuse it quite as much, and it opens it up just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm definitely catching more flavor.
Yeah, a little more sweetness, and then the heat comes right after that.
Yeah, definitely peppery.
That is like, I'm getting a lot of vanilla when I taste that. I don't know about you guys. I think to piggyback off of last week's episode, we were talking a lot about product packaging. If you haven't seen that episode, you can visit our Facebook or YouTube and watch that one. But I think we're going to roll into a little bit of product photography discussion. And we have Craig here to
that's where I come in.
give us all the insight and intelligence that he's gathered over the decades of doing this stuff. So what have you, I guess to kind of start this off, what are you noticing are some of the changes that have been made over the last decade in product photography?
I'll definitely go into a more naturalistic sort of lighting, and worrying a little bit less about if a feature's in the shadows and having it look more natural, more like it's being lit by a window.
Right, a lot of the older photography would do everything had to be lit so you could see every perfect detail from every angle. and it just ended up looking a little too open.
Yeah, things tended to be a little bit flatter, a little more lifeless. And I think people are moving away from that now.
What do you think that is?
I think they're just getting over feeling this need to see every little detail in their product. Trusting people more. I think to be able to realize that there's another side there and there's stuff that's in the shadows. I think it's
Trusting the consumer.
the consumer. Yeah. I think it's partly people are becoming more visually literate too. We have such a proliferation of photography and images out there now that people are just more used to it.
Yeah, a couple years back, maybe 5-6 years ago, I was on this message board that tons of photographers, commercial, recreational, amateurs, etc. But the one thing that I remember seeing often with food photography is make sure everything's in focus so you can get all the detail in there. But nowadays, it seems like the trend is a little different. The depth of field is much shallower, so there's bits and pieces that are in focus, but not the whole entire shot. That's one of the things that people were saying 5-6 years ago is make sure everything's in focus so you can see all the detail. Now it's definitely moved away from that.
That's a trend that comes and goes, the shallower depth of field. Right now, we're kind of at a point where it's getting a little ridiculous, some of these things. There's so little depth of field in there.
It's just a sliver.
It's just a little sliver, razor sharp.
That is something that I've definitely noticed, though, in the past, just recent, a couple years, is that they're going towards a more organic feeling photography with, like you were saying, not everything has to be in focus. At least the important parts are in focus, but everything else just kind of falls off into the background. Especially like the background, the set that it's on.
Yeah, and that lends into the styling too, which is really interesting. It used to be when I started, we'd get really into the detail of the set itself as well, and you had to be pulled back a little and see that it looks like a realistic set, like it was literally where the product was going to be used. And now we've gotten more into like these more overhead shots where everything's just laying flat, and you just have these hints of props to give you a hint of the feel of the environment, and it doesn't have to be so literal, but it still feels somehow more real that way.
And I would say, just from my experience kind of being, because I run the video production department, so it's kind of similar, but just kind of watching you over the past couple of years, I've realized how important styling is, and that really can make or break the shot.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah, if it's no matter how well it's lit and what choices you make on depth of field and angle, you really need that styling. You need to have everything work together without looking like obviously set up. But
Stage shot.
yeah, you don't want it to look staged, but you don't want it to look messy
sloppy.
either.
Yeah.
And I think a really good example is, I know we mentioned it briefly last episode, is when you go to the fast food restaurants and you look at the menu board and just how incredible those photos look, those products, and they may or may not usually come out to
quite that way when it comes out on your tray.
Right, exactly. There's lots of, even just watching you, there's lots of tricks and MacGyverisms that you can do to really enhance the look of a product, especially food.
Yeah,
especially food. Oh, the big,
definitely.
say, the hamburger sandwich trick is you don't build it going straight up and down. Each layer is pushed back a little bit so you can see everything in there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
Yeah, so if you looked at it from the top, the bottom bun would be here and the top bun is up here.
So it looks like it's sliding.
Yeah, it looks like it's sliding, except from the camera angle, it looks straight.
I've noticed too, sometimes the time it'll take, say you're doing, plate with French fries, how carefully they will lay out and keep looking at the camera each fry, and sometimes the shot won't be done until they move that last fry into just the right place.
And you know what? Even more extreme, I've seen people move grains of salt.
Okay, that's a bit much.
The tweezers and
I won't mention who, but
Although I've done that, so yeah.
Guilty.
well, before we wrap it up here, you guys have any other final thoughts on the whiskey or product photography? It's tasty. That's
Definitely
really
more
tasty.
flavor without watering it down with a full cube of ice.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's a little, I would say it's a little, still drinkable. It's personally, it's a little harsh for me just because of the alcohol content, but you definitely get more flavor out of it. But after you get that over that initial burn, it's very enjoyable.
I know, I'm even catching a little smoke on the finish that I didn't the first time I tried it.
Yeah, now that it's opened up, the vanilla is really subdued. It's maybe I added a little bit more water than you did, but it's mellowed out a lot more, and I'm getting that. It's a little drier. It's a little more smokier now.
Yeah, a little oak maybe.
Yeah. Well,
A little oaky, a little bit sweet.
Thumbs up for
I
me.
go thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Barrel Banter, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers.
Cheers. It actually is a lot better in terms of
Yeah,
flavor.
flavor.
He's on to something
Still
about
got a
that.
lot of heat though.